Thank you. Welcome to Unity of Springfield, Adult Education and World Religions and New Thought. And we have welcome to you all that are here, both in costume and those of us wearing just regular folks. And welcome to you online viewers. It's good to have you share this time with us. So today I'm going to talk about this book called In the Flow of Life, and also kind of it's by Eric Butterworth. I'm going to kind of share some of what he does, and then see if we can take it a little beyond where he goes with it. And Eric was, of course, he's a titan in Unity. He was born in Winnipeg, Canada, 1916, and died in 2003 in Connecticut. He was a best-selling author, prominent leader in Unity and Metaphysical New Thought movement. He was influenced a lot by the Fillmores, of course, and Emerson, and Eastern philosophy/religion. He was a minister of Unity churches, and Maya Angelou was one of his spiritual students. This book, In the Flow of Life, was published in 1982. Just to get you a little bit of context in terms of the timing and because some of his language and such, it's strange to think of. He was considered modern, most of us, but compared to the Fillmores, but even now, a lot of his things they start to sound dated.
Who is it?
Eric Butterworth. And I want to thank, shout out to Mitch Braucher because of his last two talks, he was coming out of this book. And it got me kind of excited to maybe have a chance in class to go a little deeper into some of the things that he talked about when he was talking. And the centering message that Butterfield shares, which I think is so important. The key, or basically, it's living life outward from within. At the point of contact with Source, that becomes who each of us beautifully diverse beings are. So I'm not much of an artist, and I'm even less of a techie.
Well, that's beautiful. Yeah.
But this little point, this part is the our physical self, and reality, the physical reality. This is the point between that and the non-physical. Both Source includes us, and of course this is two-dimensional, but it's really multi-dimensional. And so this is everywhere. This expands and continues to expand and comes around and folds over and includes everything. But the point is this point. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to also ask folks, what do they do to try and get in contact with that point? I'll share a little bit of my thoughts, but then I'm really interested in us moving beyond and learning from each other about where, when we find that point, the power of now, that current moment where everything is possible. And so he says, God, Source, whatever you want to call it, is the one, the whole of things, the allness of which and in I am. I am the flowing forth of the one. I am unique and different at the surface. There can be no eachness quite like Yet I have no existence outside of the whole. My eachness can never be separated from the allness, which is God. So living life from the outside in means collecting information from social media, our friends, family, mass media, the weather, and predominantly outside directed. That also might just include the ego, this ongoing conversation that we all have with ourselves, which describes who we are and what our world is, can also be a part of this external data source. So the great truth taught by the mystics of all ages, and it goes back several thousand years before Christ, BC, is that really the truth is that life is truly lived from within. That the truth is within. That it isn't available out there. And that each of us are the universe expressing ourselves. And thirdly, the fullness of the universe support comes primarily through you, not just to you. So the difference that, like when we're tapping in, it's not coming just to us. It's not to us. It's through us. Not that we're given this power to do these things. It's that it's occurring from within and it's coming out of us. So that there's, a little bit of a difference in the way we look at it. So believing that we're in competition with people, in conflict with the world around us, fearing, resenting, raging, and even grieving the instability of life in the world around us feels like a threat to our existence in it. So when we're, and that's a part that comes when we're living in the world from the outside in. If we're going to be dependent on this external data, it's kind of scary. It gets scary. And you can tell that you're spending more time living outside in when you're experiencing that anxiety. That's a feedback loop that says,
It's simply being afraid of the dark.
what am I focused on? What am I focused on? And of course, that resulted, we used, Don Miguel Ruiz used the domestication verbiage, and Jesus had the answer, the kingdom of God is within you. He also said, do not be anxious about your life, but first seek his kingdom, and all these things shall be yours as well. So,
Have a mic. Wendy's trying to.
Just on what you're talking about, coming from the inside out, and for me it's a real, it's kind of a minor thing, but for me it's a really important thing, is that when I am believing the powers out here, that really never is coming from a place of feeling secure and whole and strong and powerful. It usually comes from a lack-based thinking. But the truth is even if I'm looking out into the world and seeing horrible things and experiencing horrible things, nothing has changed in me. I am just creating a horror story, that's all. And so, because rather than thinking of, I have to stay internally centered because otherwise the world will get me, no. Otherwise, I'll create a world that I believe will get me and therefore experience that. No big deal. I'm still a creator. Is this fun? If it's not, do something else.
There you go. And not just Jesus, but Lao Tzu in the 6th century BC taught that the human spirit has its source in the divine fountain, which must be permitted to flow freely through man. He believed that anyone who flows as life flows has solved the enigma of human existence and needs no other power. That includes money, social standing, political power, whatever. Emerson spoke of a simple, quiet, undescribable presence dwelling very peacefully in us. Our rightful Lord, we are not to do, but to let do, not to work, but to be worked upon. Our life must be much easier and simpler than we make it. The world might be a happier place than it is. The idea and the practice of the flow of life from within requires that we temper, put on hold, transcend the grasp of our wisdom, knowledge, and experience that creates our domestication or our sense of ego. So the fact is, when we're born and when we come into our physical body, we have the basic 5 senses, among others. I won't go down that rabbit hole today, but basically we have those 5 senses. So we do get a lot of external data, and that's how we were created. And they can be very helpful to navigate in this physical world, to have access to those 5 senses. It's more of a matter of, are you able to be grounded, centered in the internal source? So the idea and practice of the flow within require, so the challenge, number one, is to identify the internal source that's within us at all times. Okay, and I'd say probably most of the people that are here have already bumped into that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. The second challenge, and as we go through these, or as go through the talk, this is where I would like people to give suggestions of things that they do to accomplish these 3 tasks. The second one is to learn to sit with it for sometimes some extended period of time, so that there's this comfortability with it. And the third one is to learn to remember it whenever we choose. So learn to remember that we can access this source, this centering, whenever we choose, and have some ways, some skill at returning to that centering or that source. Whenever we go, oh crap, I'm off base. I can feel from how I feel, the uncomfortableness that I feel. I'm off course. I'm not on target, and then have that ability to come back to source. Each of us is responsible. So the word responsible is that we're responding to either something inside of us or outside. And that we're capable. It's the combination of being able and responding. So, a lot of times, a lot of people have kind of a negative, oh, you're responsible. It's kind of, it feels heavy. But it really, it's the way we're built, the way we're put together. Truth is not just words or affirmations or books or teachings. Truth is this universal flow that can only be vaguely caught in the web of human consciousness. Theology, whether traditional or metaphysical, tends to crystallize truth and thus obstruct flow. Truth is a universal flow that can only be vaguely caught in the web of human consciousness. Theology, or the study of truth and God, whether traditional or metaphysical, tends to crystallize truth and thus obstruct flow.
Yeah, I think a large part of that is flow, is a universal flow that we've tapped into. And once you're there, I've differed a little bit from Butterworth, from the vague part of saying universal thought is around us all the time. It's what we choose to tap into through our memories that really define who we are. It's not simply a matter of we're born and die and we're done. It's a matter of our memories are eternal. And being able to tap into that universal thought, whether it's Emerson or Thoreau or Gandhi or whoever it is that we associate with, that flow is there to assist us in identifying who we are. And once we know who we are, then it's just a matter of staying within that sense of silence, that sense of what takes us there, that continuing flow that our spirit is looking for us to grow on and to move forward on. So it's those memories that you spoke of that are so critical, I think, for us to have a deeper understanding as to what they are meant to take us to. The final thought is what quantum physics is now telling us even more and more all the time, is that that thought is present. That universal thought is always there and always has been. And it's a matter of our ability to act like a prism, so to speak, so that our activities or what we do here matches that process.
Thanks. And and I think that he would agree with you, actually, Butterworth, on that. So it's as if we consider an empty fist as containing something real, and a pointing finger as the object pointed at. So that I've heard some others speak of Eckhart Tolle speaks of that. You know, one of the issues is that sometimes is that he feels that Jesus didn't really want to be a deity. He was pointing at truth, and when people saw how awesome and powerful the truth he was pointing to, then he became the savior of everything. And that's the, as opposed to one who is pointing towards truth. And so any teacher, can risk in that occurring. So.
The books that I'm reading, they talk about the difference between the ideal and the idol.
Okay.
So we idolize someone instead of understanding the ideal and being able to see that the ideal is where we want to learn how to live. So our focus is on the outward of the idol instead of the inward of the ideal. And I just thought those words helped.
Mm-hmm. So truth words, even as great utterances of master teachers, simply point to the reality of the universe that can only be experienced firsthand as a flow within ourselves. So part of that individuality of our coming into physical reality is that we're going to experience it somewhat differently than the other people that are sitting in the room with us experience it. We all have had different experiences, different lives, different families, different feelings about different things. There's overlap, and there's things that we can relate to each other about, but truly we have our own unique gifts and fears and strengths and just person.
What this flow really means to me is that when I sit down to write, after I sit there for a few minutes, I feel like I'm next to this flow, this river, and when I step into that river of thought, of truth, of whatever it is, it takes me along, and I find myself writing things I did not know that I do. I think that's the flow. That's the way I experience the flow.
Thank you. So he goes on to say, this is Butterworth, you are always in the flow. You're always in this flow, as you are always in gravity. And it is always in you. You may and often do not, you may and often do get out of the awareness of the flow. But it's always there. It's omnipresent. The need is to cease doing whatever is interfering with the natural flow of your good from within. So that's one of those tasks that we want to, is when we start to recognize that we're out of the flow from whatever feedback mechanism we use, then it's helpful to return. So using your inner guidance system, like this is me, using your inner guidance system like your emotions, notice interference with the flow. A fundamental in electronics is Ohm's law, which says current equals the power at the source divided by resistance of the conduit through which it flows, or C equals E divided by R. So, the copper wire has low resistance. The coil on your stove has a higher resistance. So when the electricity goes through it, that it resists, and the result is a heat that comes up. And I like that because nothing has no resistance. Okay, everything has some resistance. So, and I think that's important because we need to appreciate, that, okay, we're going to have some resistance. That's part of being human. It's part of the physics of the universe, is that there's going to be.
It's what we came here to experience.
That's right. So we don't need to judge ourselves for experiencing negative thoughts, feelings, experiences that we're experiencing. It just is. It's part of what happens when we live and breathe, experience. And then Dan after that.
Well, I think it's interesting that when John talks about the meditation group, he says, well, we do nothing for half an hour. And I was also thinking, one of the stories I heard from Brandon Bay was her first husband wanted to go hear this guru in India. And so they went to hear him. And she gets there and it's like dirty and muddy, and there's a bunch of Americans, and they're like, vying for a place to sit on the floor in front of this guru. And she's kind of thinking, this is not what I expected. I expected this clean, tidy, beautiful ashram. And so she's kind of judging it. And so at the end of the first session, the guru calls them up and says, I would like you to stay with me in my house during the time you're here. And so they stayed, and she said that that he would direct them how to fix food or whatever during the time they were there. And she said about the third day in, she realized that she had not had a thought for 3 days. Her mind was absolutely still and silent. And it just changed her whole thinking about this guy. But that was what I found the first time that I realized that I had located peace, was there was no mind chatter. It was nothing. And that is the connection point where you realize that there's something far more than what you are, and that's the nothing.
Well, it's something. Yeah, that was a great comment. I think a lot of meditation, or we think of meditation, is going to the silence. We hear that all the time. We hear that all the time as far as going to what a sense of nothing. Excuse me. And I think that is a simple point of flow, of that idea of not letting anything obstruct from the flow. So we always hear about meditation and monkey mind and all the things in Buddhism, whatever, but is that silence, finding the silence and going there. But beyond that, I think one of the keys I always found in Taoism for 30 years is that once you find that true sense of nature within yourself, and you find the silence within that, then it allows you to expand that to your everyday activity. So it's not a matter of being in meditation for 30 minutes or an hour or whatever. It's a matter of living within that for 24 hours a day, that the silence becomes what you do all the time. So it's not a matter of, well, I have to go sit for 30 minutes or whatever. It's a matter of finding that flow, staying within that flow, at least for me, and then living within that. And even my own writing, I find, following up what he was saying a little earlier, things that you write you didn't even know you knew. Words that you use you've never used before. And you always, well, where did that come from? Well, it came from that universal sense of flow that you have tapped into that says you're okay. And what you're doing is okay. And you should follow that thread. Stay within the thread of who you are yet to become, and then it all becomes so much a part of you that nothing else really exists beyond that. And I think that's a large part of that meditation, that sense of who we are and who we think we are yet to become.
And of course, one of the challenges, and Buddha recognized that as well, it was one of the reasons he went the direction he did, his kind of a psychology dealing with suffering, was that every day, especially those of us that when we're working and raising children and doing everyday tasks that we didn't really choose exactly the format, we have to deal with this outside physical world, and it's not really catering to the silence. You know, and so that's an ongoing challenge for everyone. It's just a part of, you know, how it's set up.
Thank you all so much, because I just had this grand epiphany that was, we filter what silence is when we say, oh, meditation's kind of difficult because the mind wants to run around and it's boring. And then I realized, oh, it's because, okay, so let me back up and say, I think the mind was meant to be a receiver, not a generator. And so if we're using the mind to, as a tool, just to tie your shoe, or, you know, like as a technical functional tool. But I learned when I was a really little girl that, using big words and talking grown up got you attention, and, you know, all, like, whatever your story is that fed your mental emotional approach and interaction with the world is what separates us. So anyway, let me just get to the point and then I'll stop. the realization that I had was that we filter all of this through the mental faculty and the emotional faculties. Those are the very things that that you're sharing, that is the silence. Silence is really loud, it's really powerful, and I just realized when I filter what the silence is, and I'm judging myself for not being in it and staying in it and stuff, it's because I'm filtering what that is through a conceptual understanding of my mental faculty. So, yay, I have the whole line. So what's beyond that I'm realizing? I can't put it into words, but thank you very much.
I think the best thing that ever happened to me is where we have to look at the color red. Try to explain to someone the color red without using the word red. And so then we begin to understand, yes, then we begin to understand ourselves as feeling individuals, that we need the sunset. Explain the sunset without using the word sunset. And so I think that's the argument against classical science, even though they have got so far with AI now that it almost sounds like you're talking to another human being, but it has no feeling. You know, it keeps the conversations because it can. So you can go back to the conversation and we can start over, but it doesn't have any feeling. It doesn't have any emotion. It couldn't explain the color red. And so, you know, I find that just in that knowledge alone, and it's real simple, is that we find the flow. You know, we know that there is something much, much larger than just the classical science. That so many, I mean, it's amazing that there's 50% of the scientific world are absolutely sure that at some point we are going to create an AI that is smart enough to become coherent. Okay, they still haven't done that yet.
We're working on it.
Yes, they're working hard, but whereas with quantum mechanics, they keep arguing against the evidence that is shown that how it works.
Okay, I want to continue with the Ohm's law stuff about resistance. So resistance begins in the mind, where self-limiting thoughts and attitudes and beliefs can become poor conductors of the flow. And this creates heat and expulsive energy not going along to perform a function. However, without getting in the weeds, we can learn to identify flow and blockages of flow, and thus respond to become the flowers or flowers when we choose. The other thing is that this energy that gets, or this heat that gets created from resistance, if you go into at least the old transistors and in certain electrical equipment still, there are things called resistors. And they're there to perform a function. That resistance has a purpose too, and especially in our physical world. So if you look at political resistance, say, well, wait a second, this isn't right. We need to resist something. But be aware that that's what we're doing. We're resisting a flow. Okay, and don't get lost in it, but be aware that, you know, I mean, we may choose to be in resistance, or we may choose to be in the flow.
Could you be in the flow and resistance at the same time?
Yes,
Yeah.
you are, because you can't help it, because there's no pure conductor.
Yeah.
when I was in China, I went to about a dozen Buddhist monasteries, and with Tibet, I went to Lhasa and everything. One of the things that they would always try to teach and say and learn is getting into the flow and staying there. That was their primary purpose and why they continued to meditate every day. That's why they tried to live in a very austere environment. That's why they thought that staying within a community of like-minded people who agreed with them from the sense of how do we find this flow, how do we stay within that flow, and how do we move beyond the flow. That
So,
was central.
so what do we do to stay in the flow? As long as we can for periods of time. Okay, you come
There we
here.
go.
Okay. Any other things that people have?
Breathing. That helps me a lot. I started meditating 6
Okay.
years ago.
They can't hear you.
Hi, this is my first visit here. I have been to the other community.
You have to hold the microphone real close.
Okay.
You can hear it now.
I was just saying that this is my first time here in the Unity, this location. I have been to the other one, but I started meditating 6 years ago after some profound grief and losses. And I tell you, that has been my life-saving. And going with the flow of that internal energy was my healing. And two things have helped me a lot, and still is breathing. So when all this distraction and anxiety from external sources come, I start breathing and connecting with source. And it's just like magical. That's probably what I'm here. This morning I didn't know what I was going to do. And I just sat down, breathed in, looked at nature, and said, let things flow and whatever comes to my mind. And the information came, go to the Unity Church, but go to the other one. And the second thing is nature. I find peace in nature. I go to nature almost every day. And when I don't have the time, I just go to my backyard and like touch the grass, look at the birds. That's where I get most of my flow in. Actually, it's not silence, it's loud, like somebody said. It comes with a lot of loud information, but beautiful information, creative things, messages, just support to whatever you need to know at the moment. So those two things for me, breathing and nature. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Another suggestion from Butterworth is before you have your first cup of coffee or tea, soda, whatever people drink, take time to establish yourself consciously in the flow of life.
Doesn't feel like life flowing until after.
Well, I don't know. Personally, what I do is I do a gratitude practice when I realize I'm still breathing. And that's the first thing that I do is I like you, the breath is very near and dear and important to me in my spiritual practice. And as soon as I realize, oh, you're breathing and you're not in that lucid dream anymore, then I start my gratitude practice, and then I get it.
I go within my writing where I left off the night before. And the very first thing I do is I go to write. And that takes me there before I have that cup of coffee or tea or whatever I'm going to do. And it gives me the ability on a continuing basis. It's like it never left. And sometimes I think overnight dreaming or whatever you want to call it, that process will also move me beyond where I was, that sets the stage for, oh, okay, now I need to do this. But that flow early in the morning really helps the sense of connection to source for me.
Okay. All right, I've got a few things I wanted to run through here, and then we're going to do a group practice. So when we experience frustration in others or our environment, that can be feedback that not from the outside world is obstructing our objectives, but there's something in us is obstructing the flow. So if you find yourself getting your ire up when somebody in front of you in traffic slows down so you can't go through the yellow, orange, red light, or something will not stop talking about some topic that is upsetting you, the weather is unappealing, etc., you may say to yourself, thank you. Thank you for you have been instrumental in revealing to me that I am out of the flow. And then grateful for the reminder. Take a quiet moment or two to be still and know I am in the flow. When Jesus taught, pray for your enemies, he indicated the need to elevate your thoughts about them, for they are your thoughts that are obstructing the flow in your mind. Another one is, wherever I am, there let me be. This means be a channel for the flow of the infinite creative process. If you get and stay in the flow, you will not let the attitudes and antics of other persons squeeze you into their mold. And you will let the spirit within you sustain you with all that you need for love and understanding. It is better to bring a light than to curse the darkness. That light helps you to see the divinity in others and in yourself. Wherever you are, God is. And take time in the morning to get that flow of love, and then actively project this love and love all around you. So 2 Buddhist monks had taken a sacred vow to never touch a woman. And they were on this trip on foot across the countryside. You recognize it. And they encountered a woman who was in fear of crossing a rain-swollen river. So one of them was moved to compassion, and he lifted her onto his shoulders, and he carried her to the other side. The monks continued their journey mile after mile. The second monk nagged at the first monk for breaking his sacred vow. Finally, the first monk said, my brother, I simply carried the damsel across the stream, but you have been carrying her for the last hour. So do what you can and then let go and walk on.
There's a,
Hang on. No.
there's a laughter exercise that's perfect for this. And what you do is you point at somebody who's screwing up, right? And you go, ah, ha, 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 and then you go, ah, ha, 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 ha.
And she's pointing at herself.
And you point at yourself then. And you can't help but laugh at yourself and get over the whole damn thing in just a minute.
Thank you. So every morning before setting out in the world, prepare yourself by a prayer or meditation to get consciously in the flow of life. Don't be like Dirty Harry and expect the world to make my day. Or for you to expect others to make you happy. When you give the world, outside world, even family and friends, we anxiously watch that no one threatens our position or tampers with our rights. The symbol of this consciousness is a closed fist, evidencing tension, frustration, and hostility.
Or a pointing finger.
So we're going to, that leads us to the exercise we're going to do. So I want you to kind of hold out your hands and then clench your fists tightly. This is a two-fisted symbol of frustration and force. Can you feel your whole being reflected reflecting a defensiveness, even a readiness to fight. When the fists are clenched, the mind is tense, and the thoughts of anger, defensiveness, and fear surge into your consciousness. Approach anyone with clenched fists and watch him clench his own. Now open your hand and let them fall to your side or comfortably in your lap. Watch your tensions leave, and your whole body begin to relax. The open hand can hold no weapon. It is a symbol of goodwill and peace. The open hand can pat someone on the back, lift someone up, grasp hands, type a letter, plant a garden, and turn the pages of a book. Closed hands hold on possessively to both people and situations. Open hands, let them go. Open hands symbolize a readiness to accept the flow. Hold your hands out in a posture of readiness. Palms up, hands together, forming a cup or receptacle. It can, in prayer or meditation, be helpful if you see it as a symbolic gesture of readiness to receive the fullness of the flow of life. Vortex. Now let's take a few moments in quiet reflection. Here I am, Mother, Father. Use me as an instrument of your love, an agency of your peace. I am in the flow of life, and I relate easily and lovingly, patiently and understandingly with all persons. I know that no matter what any person is or does, what I do can most certainly enable me to get along. It may mean I will get along well with the other folks, or it may mean I will get along without them. And in every case, I know that my responsibility is simply to keep in the flow, to keep seeing with eyes of love, to be willing to receive and to be responsive to the all-sufficient flow of life, love, and wisdom. I go forth with the joyous certainty that whatever persons and situations may come to me in this day, it will be good, for I will be in the flow of good. And if I should have even a fleeting moment of concern, I will simply let go and let flow. There are sections of the book that I didn't really address. But one of them was on giving. On giving, on sharing, giving. You know, the part of the flow you know, that has to do more with sharing, giving to others and sharing with others, and then as a way of manifestation, that whole part of flow. And so I also wanted to read a brief, it's a little section out of the prophet by Kahil Gibran. He says, "You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give. There are those who give little of the much they have, and they give for recognition, and their hidden desire makes their gifts unwholesome. And there are those who give with pain, and that pain is their baptism. And there are those who give and know not pain in giving, nor do they seek joy, nor give with mindfulness of virtue. They give as in yonder valley the myrtle breathes its fragrance into space. Through the hands of such as these, God speaks, and from behind their eyes, she smiles upon the earth. Outer centered, which depletes the giver, versus inner centered, which endows the gift with that which transcends his intrinsic value and which blesses the giver, that like a faucet filling a cup, he is immediately and correspondingly filled from within." And now it's time to do announcements. Wow, they're not 4 pages.
That's good.
Yeah. Okay, everyone is invited to Fellowship Hall right after the service to welcome new members and enjoy a piece of cake. Come share in the stillness this evening and every Sunday evening at 6 p.m. during our group meditation. Whether you are new or have been meditating for years, everyone is welcome. The monthly board meeting is tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. All are welcome to attend. Daylight savings time ends this weekend. Be sure to set your clocks back 1 hour before you go to bed on Saturday, November 1st. Enjoy the extra hour of sleep. We're going to fall back one more time. We're excited to welcome Amy Burnett as our guest speaker next Sunday. Amy has been a dedicated member of Unity for 11 years. Well, we all know and love Amy. She also speaks here in our class here. And we're thankful for her ongoing service and leadership. That's an understatement. Our monthly Friendship Sunday potluck is next Sunday, November 2nd. Please bring a dish to share and join us after the service. We need one more volunteer to help wash dishes and clean up after the meal. No one would have to do it more than once a year. You can sign up at the connection table out in the foyer. Next Sunday, because we will be setting up for the potluck, there will not be a New Thought adult education class at 9:15. And
Next Sunday?
next Sunday is no adult day, but there will be a nice potluck afterwards. And our fall yard cleanup is happening on Saturday, November 8th. If you can lend a hand, please sign up at the connection table. Together we can keep our grounds looking beautiful. Also, look for and ask about other things that can be done. I think there's going to be some kind of a list of some things. So if you can't come on the 8th, but you want to go ahead and volunteer to go ahead and take care of the specific task, that's another way we can get things done. Because not everybody fits in, has the same schedule. On Sunday, November 9th, there will be a YOU pancake breakfast from 9 to 10:30 a.m. They are raising money to go to the winter rally. Please come have some breakfast and support our youth. And then join us for the quarterly town hall on Sunday, November 9th, right after the service. So pancake and then town hall. Everyone is encouraged to stay and be part of the conversation as we share updates and look ahead. That's it. Thank you.
You gonna meet back there in circle?
I hate it because